flagship podcast, 20 Minute Tim's episode 285. And I am joined by the Milk Tray Man, Stephen R. Buckle, and the Milky Bar Kid, Martin Melly. And I am, of course, your host, Jamie. And look, listen, what a roller coaster it's been with Celtic this week. It has been stressful, to say the least. A really good, really strong victory against a really good Real Betis team in the Europa League. Ultimately gone out of the competition. Yeah. Furuhashi getting injured. Stressing my box out for 90 minutes against Motherwell. Melly, where do you want to begin this week's podcast?
I think we should go back to the European game because it sort of bleeds into what happened at the weekend there. We changed the team to save our players and not get any injuries, yet we bring on a guy and get the biggest injury, the worst one that could happen. It's such a weird feeling from a game because you beat Real Betis when you've got a completely changed team. You've had a good performance, but yet the result, the performance, everything is clouded with this injury to Kyogo because it's massive.
I know, it's a weird one, Stephen, because that is like beating Betis 3-2 with basically Celtic's second string side. That is in effect a reserve team. That team is one of the worst teams we have put out in a European game for a little while. Yeah,
I mean, that's a Champions League qualifier team, isn't it?
That's really one of these cobbled together teams that we never want to see, and would be tearing your hair out if Celtic had to field that. Yeah. But look, those boys, they took to the pitch. A couple of things I like. The way they approached the game. It was Ange's team. They carried out Ange's instructions. Yeah. They put in a hell of a shift. They got the result, but you still come away feeling like it was a loss.
Well, it's the official. It's an old 20-minute Tim's favourite. It's the official. This was the one thing we didn't want to happen moment, wasn't it? It was a real Pyrrhic victory, as you know, scholars maintain. It was a Pyrrhic victory. Yeah. Oh, I read boy. The nature of that is that yes, you've won, but the losses sustained during that win are such that you're not going to win the next battle, really. So, very, very unfortunate. You can't get away from it. It's the main takeaway from that game, unfortunately, as well as a really good performance, a really exciting game as well. From makeshift is putting it gently. That's putting it respectfully, calling it a makeshift team. But it was a good win. When we recorded our immediate reaction in the car outside the stadium, Melly and I, we said
Patreon.com/20 Minute Tims. Sign up, you get reaction podcasts from right
the
outside
match
the
podcast.
ground. Yeah.
What we said was, it's a dead rubber game, but we may as well win it rather than lose it. It's always better to win games than lose them. That's how
football works.
Yep, philosophers said that. But there's no getting away from it to have lost Kyogo in such senseless.
I mean, there's a timeline of events that we need to talk about, but at the tip of everyone's tongue here is the Kyogo thing, and there's no escaping it. So we just need to address it. Was that a mistake by Ange Melly?
Huge mistake. Looking at the game, Ayeti going off, you're like, right, okay. Again, what's the point in the guy? It's unfortunate for him. He was actually trying to run and he got injured, which is probably why he got injured.
Out of character for him, that's funny.
20 odd minutes into a game, which you're already winning 1-0, which is a dead rubber of all dead rubbers for both teams, and you bring on the one guy you can't afford to get injured because Giamakis is injured. The guy after him, Giacomakis or whatever, the guy after him is now injured, and the one guy you've got left, you bring on for he's going to need to play at least 70 minutes, and we know how he plays. Yet you've got, we've seen later on in the game, Henderson comes on, does fine. Mikey Johnson comes on, does fine.
The thing about it, Stephen, is there's no two ways about it. That game was a dead rubber. Ange wasn't chasing a victory in that game, and you can tell that by the team he put out, with Urugidi and Scales and Liam Shaw and these guys that took to the pitch. So to put, what boggles my mind, right, slightly, is to put your crown jewels, so to speak, on that pitch for a game that you admit yourself means absolutely nothing. The most important player, not only the most important player, arguably one of the best players in the team, him or Jota, it's a toss-up, really. Also, you have to factor in, he's the only fit player for that position. The only one. You've run out of players. All the rest of them are injured. And, there's a lot of things to weigh up. But part of me also thinks that no matter what happens, there is no alternative universe where Ange Postecoglou, the manager, doesn't think, might as well bring on Kyogo because I could win this. There was no other way that was going to go. Knowing the way Ange approaches the games, knowing how highly he thinks of Kyogo, He's got Kyogo sitting on the bench, just looking at him, ready to play. There was no alternative universe that was going to go another way, was there?
No. It's hard to really talk about this because I'm still reeling from it. If I'm totally honest, I've lost Kyogo because we found out earlier in the season, found out brutally and harshly that we can't play without him.
No,
there's just simply no way of replacing him. Got the job done against Motherwell, which we'll come on to a wee bit later on, but we just about got the job done. But there was a period earlier in the season where, admittedly, it came coincidentally alongside the loss of Callum McGregor as well. We just couldn't play without those two guys, but they've put the crown jewels on the line. Sorry for that troubling image there, but to dangle your crown jewels out there and just beckon the football gods to chop them off was absolute suicide tactics.
Do you think it's the first big mistake Andrew's made as a manager?
I do, yeah.
It is. In a football sense, it absolutely is. There's no getting away from it. I've fully bought into Ange Postecoglou. I don't think that really needs said again because I think we've all been huge fans of him on here to the point where
for day one, I think.
Just
for day one.
But when you listen to some of the stuff he's done in the media recently, has been absolutely brilliant. And I'm thinking, can I actually continue to do a podcast on this guy? Because the time will come where I have to criticise him, and I don't know if I can do it. I'm in a compromised position here. I don't know if I can put the boot into this guy if the time ever comes. But that's the first time where I've ever been like, I can't justify that. I can't see it I can't bring a different angle to it where I think, we all think this, but maybe there's a case for that. I can't do it.
That's what I mean. It's Ange's style, isn't it? You think, I'll go for it. Why not? Why? You know what? Ange's probably thinking, Kyogo can make an impact here. He's probably seen opportunities in the game that we as fans are not seeing that Kyogo could capitalise on. He thinks it'll be a cracking game. It'll be a better game of football with him on it, and it's those instincts that just took over a wee bit. Whereas us, and a lot of people saying, "Well, it's easy." There'll be people sitting here going, "Well, it's easy with hindsight to say that you shouldn't bring Kyogo on," but the fact is, it's no hindsight because the minute the board went up with Kyogo's number on it, everyone was going, "What are you doing?" Whoa.
Even before that, Stephen will vouch for me. I had my hand shouting no when he was warming up.
No.
On his knees.
Slow motion.
Like Nicolas Cage at the end of The Rock.
But the thing that also really annoyed me is we've got so many injuries and now and people are going nuts about hamstrings and all that. So if that's the case and Ayeti went down in this game, if Kyogo's going to come on, let him warm him up for more than 30 seconds. He ran down, done a couple of runs up and down then, but straight back. It was the same with Mikey Johnson when he came on yesterday for James Forrest. A run down, a couple of runs. Hamstrings are pinging everywhere. It's winter and we're getting guys going on to games
left and right
that aren't warmed up for it properly. And even with the Kyogo thing and okay, maybe he's the best player to come on, it might light up the game. Most fans wouldn't have cared. See if we'd have got through that game one each and no injuries, it would have been better than winning 3-2 and losing Kyogo for me, because the bigger picture is we've got 3 or 4 away games before we play Rangers. We've got a tough home game against Hibs and a cup final against Hibs. That's more important than this. And the game lasted 100 minutes near enough. So Kyogo would have been on it for 80 minutes if it had panned out like that. So it was a shocking decision from Ange. And like Stephen, I don't say that lightly because I find it hard to criticise the guy because he has done it. But in this occasion, I can't see what good was ever going to come of it.
Ange out.
No,
it's got to go.
I think the thing is, there's a lot of speculation about why Celtic are picking up so many injuries. And a couple of months back, people on Twitter were absolutely definitely sure, which means it's correct. They were absolutely definitely sure the reason that we were getting so many injuries was because Celtic didn't have a head of sports science in place.
Right.
There's a whole medical department, and I'm sure those guys were just doing what they were always doing until the new guy came in. You know what I mean? I'm sure they had a bit of medical knowledge about them. That might have played into it. Who knows, right? But we've got that guy in place now, and we're still getting injuries. So it must mean we've hired the wrong guy, and he needs sacked immediately. He needs to go. Yeah. Another thing that, and this is based on no medical knowledge at all, just my own ramblings. I think the problem you've got here is the squad is just too thin. And that might seem like obvious, but for the high intensity approach that Ange takes to the games, the high intensity training, that's something that's come out of Celtic Park a lot. The players are talking about the demands that he places on his players in training and in the games. We are just burning through bodies here. And the problem is when one guy's injured, the next guy in isn't good enough. Yeah. So we need to keep relying on the same players week in, week out if you want to get results. I'm sure Ange would love nothing more than to drop Jota for a couple of games and bring in Mikey Johnson. Mikey Johnson just knocked it. Facts. And that's the problem. He would love for a couple of games to rest Kyogo, but yet he's not up to it. So he just doesn't have these options out with his starting 11.
This is all Ange's done well coming in, getting us to this point. I didn't think we'd be doing as well, but it all just feeds back to the summer where we were going, we are wildly underprepared for everything because see all these players coming in late. Pre-season is a main thing for a player when he's playing. They need the pre-season. They didn't get that under Ange. They didn't get up to the intensity, so they're always chasing from there. Players that were there have been playing. David Turnbull's played every league game for Celtic. Yeah. The only reason for that is because there's nobody else to play. Cal McGregor's been injured. Tom Rogic has been injured. Ralston's been injured. Greg Taylor's been out. We've had Starfelt injured recently. You can go right through the team, every position.
Almost everyone.
And it's going to happen because we have so many games and because everything that went on in the summer with the lack of preparation, the lack of game time, like guys like Forrest and Johnson getting injured during them because we were in a mess. We were in a mess and we weren't prepared, and this is how it happens.
And I think it's obvious that I think we all knew that this Ange revolution was probably going to take more than one window.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably going to take one window. And I feel like we're just a bit like, we're desperate to get to January.
We've been desperate since the 1st of September to get to January.
We need to get these reinforcements and we need to get these bodies in. And you're looking at this team, and I don't want to take it away for this because at the end of the day, it was those 11 guys that ended up getting a really strong result against Betis. And you're looking at thinking, did anyone stake a claim for further contribution throughout the season?
Maybe one or two. I think what we said before the game on our At the Match podcast, another plug for that, is that I think it would take something pretty extraordinary for you to come in a game that everyone knows is under special circumstances with, it's just a B team that's been thrown in to fulfill a fixture. I think it would have taken something pretty out of the ordinary to think, well, that guy needs to play more going forward. There was a couple of players who stood out. There was a couple of really good performances in there. Thought Scales looked good. Thought Shaw battled hard. I thought he looked decent. Other than that, there's a couple of decent performances in there.
Welsh was good.
Welsh was excellent.
We know what he brings, but I think every game that Welsh plays, he looks like he's improving. And you think to yourself, well, if one of the centre halves does get injured, I'm less nervous with him dropping in.
I'm very confident in Welsh. I just consider him part of the sort of maybe a rotation of defenders. We all know what the first choice is, but if Welsh was to come in for a couple of games, I've got no fears about him at all. I think he might be quite underrated in that regard. I think when people talk about Celtic bringing through youth products, the tendency is to go, we brought through James Forrest, even though it was like 12 years ago, or Callum McGregor, which was like 6 years ago or something like that. Now, Stephen Welsh never really gets mentioned. I think he's a really excellent youth product. I know he came through in less than ideal circumstances and he'll forever be attached to last season, but his level of performance has been great so far. Before we move too far away for the injuries thing, I think there's a tendency at all times for everyone to want to form an immediate opinion on things. Right?
That's how it works, mate. What happens is someone comes in, they play 3 games, you decide they're pissing, you're not letting change them.
But on the injuries that itself, it's like people want to make a definitive case for what they think has happened. I think it's quite tricky to assume that Celtic are just training mentally, so we're all pinging injuries. The strength of the squad is what it is. But it's going to be very difficult for any squad to sustain 5 hamstring injuries in a row or whatever it is. But I think there's probably an inherent danger in just going like, well, Celtic must be doing something weird in training. Because
I'm not saying they're doing anything, because I'd think along those lines. I think we're just putting too many miles through the legs of the same players over and over and over again.
It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage, as Indiana Jones once said. I agree with that, actually, but I think that there's a tendency in other places to assume that everyone's doing squats on like a yoga ball or something like that, and they're just falling over things and all that, leaving weights on the floor and people are tripping over them. I don't think there's anything bizarre going on at training.
You don't think, what you're saying is you don't think necessarily the training at Celtic is subpar in any way.
I don't think it's. Remember when Gary Caldwell was at Partick Thistle, he had them all kidnapped?
Yeah.
He had them kidnapped by the SAS.
Yes, if you don't know that, by the way, that's a true story. Team bonding, Gary Caldwell was Partick Thistle manager briefly, and he had them all kidnapped and bundled into a van, and some of them were greeting and all that.
Some of them ran, and
one guy escaped running crying away.
Super army soldiers kidnapped Partick Thistle. But yeah, I find it a bit troublesome, a bit problematic if you don't detest that word. But it's like I think people are leaping to the conclusions that nobody knows what they're doing at Celtic, and like the sports science is a lot of nonsense. They don't know what they're doing. They're all just running laps and busting their hamstrings in training.
Not speaking of injuries, speaking of players who might not be fit and all that. I was in the Discord, which again is the Patreon, a benefit of the volunteer for Patreon. Listen, we've mentioned it 4 times. Patreon.com/20minute-tims. If you don't know by now, it's a way for you to support this podcast in exchange for extra podcasts. So you get extra content, videos, writing, and all that sort of stuff. And you can support fan-led Celtic coverage. James McCarthy. James McCarthy, for me, I watched James McCarthy the whole second half because I was slightly suspicious about his input in the game. And I hate to say that players are hiding, right? But there was definitely, because I just watched him. That's the only thing I did for the whole second half. Player camp. Yeah, Player Flynn. That was me.
Player jam.
Player jam. There we go. I was watching him for the whole second half. Definitely moving out the way of the ball. Definitely taking up positions just behind Betis players not to get the ball. A couple of times, Stephen Welsh was running beyond him. He closed down. A couple of times there was recovery runs that James McCarthy just wasn't taking on. And then crucially what I noticed was, when did Celtic make the triple sub? Was it about 70 odd minutes?
Yeah.
See, about 20 minutes into the second half, James McCarthy puts his hand up to the bench.
I seen that.
He puts his hand up to the bench, right? Didn't get subbed after it. So I think, based on this, I think James McCarthy, there might be a wee bit of the sick note about him. A wee bit that I'm injured, I'm not up to fitness. If I'm being kind, what I might think the problem with James McCarthy is, I don't think James McCarthy's got enough confidence in his own fitness.
That's what I'd say.
And I think that's maybe the reason Ange didn't sub him then. He thought, this guy needs to be shown to himself that his legs still work, that he's not going to bust a knee. He needs to be shown to himself that he's still got it in him. Now, the reality of the situation is, he managed himself through the remainder of that game, doing very little. I started doing a joke in the Discord. I think there was like 20 odd minutes of the game left, 30 minutes of the game left. I says, I'm going to play a game here. If James McCarthy has 5 more touches of the ball, I'll shave my head. And he had 2 in the last 20 odd minutes of the game. So
I thought he played well, but prior to that, I thought the first half he was pinging like diagonals over at the other side and that. And I thought,
as the game goes on, he withdraws himself. He withdraws himself for the game, looks to get subbed, and the manager keeps him on. Then he manages himself through that. And I think to myself, I know he struggled with pre-season. I know he struggled with COVID. I know he struggled with injuries and setbacks. And once a player doesn't get a good run at it, but I also think there's part of James McCarthy who's just lacking a bit of confidence in his own fitness here.
There was one moment in particular in the second half where he was about to close someone down, and it just so happened the seat I was occupying, he's basically facing me. So he went to run to close someone down, then changed his mind. He thought, well, I'm not going to get there, so I may as well not do it. And it did look like it's only my opinion. I'm not a mind reader. I know people say that about me, but I'm confirmed I'm not a mind reader. But I just thought to myself, he's talked himself out of that there.
Yeah.
And it's not that, oh, he's a shite bag if we're getting into a 50-50. It's not that old trope, but it really was a, if I go for that, something bad might happen sort of thing.
And I think he's just worried that, if I put on the afterburners here, or if I do, my knees are going to explode. Yeah. And he's in the back of his head, he's thinking, he just lacks a bit of confidence in himself. But you're right, I think we're starting to see maybe wee glimpses of what James McCarthy can offer. I think he's a much calmer player than some people are maybe expecting. He definitely likes to play with the game in front of him and see what's going on, and as you say, ping the diagonals and play the cute wee through balls and all that sort of stuff. But I did notice in that game that I think he's still struggling with some form of lingering injury.
Yeah. And see, just with McCarthy as well in that game, and then in the Motherwell game at the weekend, we seen Beaton in that position. For me, I'd play McCarthy there. I don't think he quite could have played the 2 games back to back, but we've seen it the Motherwell game again. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. It just seemed a bit passive in midfield. It was taking too long from defenders to midfield out wide, and again, it just seemed as if we were slowing down and slowing the build-up play, whereas when McCarthy plays, I don't get that feeling. Obviously, McGregor there would be ideal, but we simply don't have the bodies right now to be doing that.
I mean, we've referenced the beginning of the season a couple of times in this particular podcast, and a couple of times in recent weeks about how we were going to approach this. Celtic ended up getting 3 wins in the Europa League group, 9 points. I think we are one of, or if not the only team to go out on that win point tally. I think you said it a couple of weeks ago, Melly, and might have even been on a reaction pod, that you're just proud now that you've got a Celtic team who can actually compete in Europe. Yep. Now, I know, Neil Lennon, who does listen to this podcast, would be saying, well, look,
Neil Francis
Lennon would be saying, look, my Celtic team beat Lazio and all that. It wasn't only a couple of years ago.
He would say that, yeah.
He would say that we were doing this. But last season was a major dip, and it seems that Ange has got us competitive now on domestic fronts. We're in the League Cup final, but that European one again, and I'm really glad that we managed to get a win against Betis, because it just sort of shows you, we're starting to build something here.
Yeah, definitely. If you're from the start of the group, you're going, come on, man, what a draw that was. We were speaking about, Stephen, that's a shocker of a draw, considering we were the second seed, were we? Or one of the top better seeds in there.
It gets harder through context as well. Now that you see all these teams and how they're performing domestically. Obviously,
where are they in the leagues?
Draws on paper look hard, but then as the season plays out, you think, well, they're third in La Liga, they're second, they're fourth in Bundesliga. This, it was a very difficult group we got.
So when you're looking at it, quite like the Scotland qualification recently, like that was the ideal for Scotland, because they got 4 points off the two teams about them, and then they got a win over Denmark and all that. But with the Celtic thing, you looked at that from the start and went, right, we need 6 points from Ferencvaros, and then we need to try and win one of our home games, and maybe if you could scrape a draw, we'd definitely be through it. We just missed out on that one draw away from home, or a draw by Leverkusen. But at the same time, Celtic get beaten some games, but there was pride again. You were going, do you know what? This is the sort of start of something. We're going to go into this next season, and we know if Ange is still here, most of these players will still be here. We're going to play the exact same way. But when you look at it, we go, we'll be better at it by then, but we'll be ready for these games. That first Betis game was another makeshift team patched together, and we get beat 4-3. There's been other games, the Ferencvaros at 3 o'clock kickoff and all that. All these mental things that have happened throughout the time. We were missing McGregor and Kyogo for a bit, so just a bit more settled Celtic team. You're going, we could make a go at this in Europe, and now we're in the Europa Conference. Bit of a tough draw, but you've got something to work with there now.
I know the final game, the final 3 of those 9 points was in a quote dead rubber game. But that's not the full story.
Can't tell me Betis didn't want to win that game.
Exactly. I was at the game. I knew that if Iglesias had scored 2 goals, they're trying to win the game. You're not going to turn up and just turn in nothing for the sake of your travelling fans and all that. They were trying to win that game. They had chances to at least draw level towards the end. So
their second team's better than our second team.
Oh, yeah, comfortably. Sure. Comfortably. They've got guys like Joaquin played 100 minutes, by the way. After that conversation, we had last week about how wingers don't take anyone off after 30. He's 40 and still skinning folk in the right. So
maybe it goes back the way.
Basically, he's Benjamin Button of the wing world. So they had cracking players in there. William Carvalho, who's been on the verge of one of these big moves for what feels like about 5 or 6 years. They've definitely got better second string than us, and Celtic got the job done. And you may as well make a fist of it. And it was a chance for those players to, as much as we've already said that I don't think anyone really urgently announced themselves as he's a must starter going forward. So what? They'll have made some sort of impression. That guys like Shaw and Scales and all that, Urhoghide who came in, they've all at least now made their debut. They've all put their hand up and made themselves at least a consideration to play some part.
Bodo Glimt,
that guy for Star Wars, very good. Yeah, almost had me going there.
Lord of the Rings. Difficult draw.
It's a good one for game-wise, terrible one for the away days. I mean,
7,000 stadium.
So it's no great in that respect. Plus, if you're looking at this Europa Conference, you go, this is a level down. That's a draw that's kind of in the Europa League level, I'd say, because they're a good team. They've been doing very well recently. If you've read up on them, or at least seen they beat Roma. So
6-1. Anybody that was a second string Roma team of sorts. But anyone who beats a Jose Mourinho team 6-1 is not to be taken lightly.
It's just one of those ones that could have been better, couldn't it? But I'm looking forward to the game. It's one of those where it's a hard game, but it's the cusp of we should still win, because they'll be going through their sort of pre-season at the time.
Did you hear what Brendan Rodgers said about the Europa Conference League?
Oh, tell me.
He says not too sure what it is really after he was informed in it.
Snarky bastard, man.
100% would have it on his LinkedIn if he won it.
So that's that getting piled into the special filing cabinet with Marianne Shved as things that Brendan Rodgers has never heard of. That's terrific stuff.
So the Betis game, the main takeaway from that obviously was the Kyogo injury. Rangers at the moment keep winning. We have got a lot. Did you just? Oh, this? Oh, that is a solid goal. It's 20-minute Tim's badge. Yeah, you can win one.
What we need is a wee effect on the video here going ting.
By I shouldn't have left that embarrassing, really. Leaving that line there. How do you get one by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Podcast Addict and include your Twitter name, or just write in the comments below. Give me a badge with your Twitter name. I'll just throw that out. Yeah, sorry. The main takeaway there from the Betis game was the injury to Kyogo, and then we were all shiting ourselves about the Motherwell game because, frankly, Stephen, this league title race is hotting up. Now, there's two ways to look at it. Rangers are not dropping any points.
No.
And they seem to have got a new manager bounce from the wee man coming in. He's simplified things, pared it back, made the things a lot easier to understand. And the teamers seem to be responding from that. They were all a bit bored with Steven Gerrard, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has sort of revitalised them a wee bit, and that's fair to say. I don't think he's lost a game yet, and he drew. Leon is the only scratch in his card. The other way to look at it is we're not going anywhere.
Nope.
Celtic are not going. Celtic are not going anywhere, and Rangers would be looking at that Betis game, watching Kyogo get injured, watching us have a difficult, potentially sticky tie against Motherwell. They come through their game at Hearts. They're watching us in the afternoon, thinking, right, Celtic are going to drop points here, and we're not going anywhere. They're Ivan Drago, and we're Rocky. That's what this is. That's what this league is. Every time we fall down, every time something happens, Celtic are back up. Celtic are nipping at the heels. We are going absolutely nowhere in this league.
That's a good way to look at it, because Melly did that to me. He calmed me down when we were doing our Patreon. We did a podcast regarding the Motherwell game, and which is available to listen to. But I said I was quite worried now, because I think psychologically, you get yourself up for the so-called harder games that your rivals are playing, and I think we can all agree Tynecastle is one of those. You think, well, they could maybe take something.
Not when Nick Walsh is a ref.
No. And for them to be 2-0 up very early on, I just gave up on it and thought, right, I can forget that. And I thought, right, I'm quite concerned about this now. But Melly's point, I was floating off into the distance, into a world of pain here, and he just pulled my wee balloon cord back down and said to me, another troubling image there. But he said to me, look, the other way to look at that though is that Rangers can look at us and say, well, they're losing all these players and they're still picking up wins, and that is basically what we're forced to look at these games like, because we're currently playing just without an attack now. We're missing 5, to my knowledge, attacking footballers, and that's very, very difficult to play with. At the best of times, never mind when you're in or when you're chasing in a title race. So it's difficult circumstances, but Celtic are still getting the results, and that's what counts.
We're talking about this paper thin squad, and there's no doubt it's paper thin, but Ange's got players there who are coming in and they're stepping up and they're doing jobs for us in unfamiliar positions. And that team that we cobbled together against Motherwell, we got the job done. It was almost one-man team stuff at sometimes with Tommy Roderick. I think that guy's been unplayable recently. No? You disagree?
I've got to hear this.
Hold on.
Hold on.
He got the winning goal, but I just thought the rest of his play, he was wasteful. Like,
who was better than him on the day?
Well, I'm not saying he was bad or he's terrible, but the fact is when we've got guys like Kyogo and Jota out, Rogic sort of becomes the main man, and when he had his goal, which was a great finish, but he had 3 other great opportunities that you'd expect a guy him. I think that's only his 2nd goal of the season so far. So when you're down on all these players, you want your big players to come up with. I hear all the time, build a team around the guy, which I don't agree with, because you can't rely on him. But if you're going to go through stages when you need a guy like that to step up, I thought that game was it. Albeit he did get the goal, but for the chances he missed as well, like gilt-edged chances that he should do better with.
He's always been fond of that though, those mental shots for the edge of the box, way over, leaning all the way back for somebody with absolutely flawless technique when it comes to dribbling, when they hit the chin up in the air and leaning all the way back and shooting for the edge of the box, scooping it about 10 yards over the bar.
Especially when it's on his right foot. For a guy that's so good on his left foot, he can skip them over. But look, Rogic was one of the better players, but just when it comes to that, there's going to be a point where Celtic are defending well right now, so anything to nil means we should really win the game, because if we can get that goal. But if they hit the bar, I don't think they ever really troubled us after that. But in a tougher game where another team scores, we need to take these chances when we're down on players, and I just felt Rogic was a wee bit wasteful. I don't want it to seem like I'm having a go at him, but
Lambasts,
Aye.
Aussie
just
ace.
must do better.
Have you seen Stephen? He just sat there and blasted.
He blasted him. He
blasted
him.
Tom Rogic.
Another troubling image.
Just blasted Tom Rogic, right?
but
He was the best player on the day.
it's difficult for me to say that because when I look around,
Sounded
Tom,
quite easy. He went on for quite a long time.
Well, it's because I expect more from Tom Rogic because he's good, and when I look about him, I go, Mikey Johnson, Abada, they're not going to do anything. Turnbull up front, it's not ideal. Where the goal's going to come from, Tom Rogic has to be the main man, and I just felt he was a wee bit wasteful.
We can't. I mean, every day we're talking about here, we're just basically talking about injuries. James Forrest, I'm starting to get a wee bit concerned about James Forrest. There's no many wingers just the facts here. There's no many wingers in their 30s who can sustain many injuries and come back to being the player that they once were. And James Forrest was out for a long time, and I don't think he's ever been fit. I'm sure that
No.
he wasn't fit. Definitely wasn't fit against Motherwell. There was a game recently. Was it Hearts game he played? He had his leg taped.
Yeah, down
Aye.
the front.
I had taping on his legs for the Hearts game. Obviously, with Jota being out, we're trying to cobble together and get all hands on deck here. But I'm starting to be a wee bit worried that James Forrest, no finished, but worried that how long the rehabilitation for James Forrest might take longer than he's got left.
Only natural. It's
Kind of thing, you know,
and
age-based decline and all that.
That's it. And people will point to the fact that he made a huge contribution at Hampden against St Johnstone to get us into the final. But again, that was off the bench as well. That wasn't like he'd been dominant the entire game. He came on and just made a key contribution on the day. We had the discussion last week about, if you weren't listening last week, come on.
We've been doing this for 7 years.
But the gist of it was that wingers stop taking players on when they get to, it tails off a cliff before you get to 30, but by the time you get to 30, it's almost gone.
This was a study you read. This wasn't.
This
isn't an opinion you came up with.
Yeah, it was an article in the Athletic that broke it all down for us. And
We get it, you read.
yeah,
I know.
I read a book a week. So websites. But I didn't know we were going to be hammered with it the very next week, and James Forrest was going to pull up again. The thing about James Forrest is that, I know a lot of people will defend him and say that people were writing off Scott Brown around about this time, but what I would say is that it's a very, very different position. I mean, if you were reading like James Forrest's his report, you would be like, well, it says under here strengths, it's taking players on. But that's just your job, though, isn't it? So, under weaknesses, you've put every other position on the pitch. So we need. I'm joking about this, of course, but I think we need to get used to the idea that James Forrest isn't going to be the James Forrest of 4 years ago, not at his age and not coming off the back of these terrible injuries.
That's it.
He can't go 2 minutes without getting injured.
Well, that's it. I don't doubt he's still got it in him,
Oh, of course.
But I just think these injuries, I'm starting to get a wee bit concerned about it.
It would be all right if Abada was good, but unfortunately, he's not turned out to be a sort of replacement because, look, James Forrest is a good player. He's a good player to have, but again, kind of like Rogic and a lot of players we've got, can't rely on it to be that guy out there every week. You're going to need to have somebody who's capable to come in. And right now, we don't have that. Abada's played against Betis and moved over a number of positions. Came into the game a wee bit towards the end, but again at the weekend, didn't take on his man. Just take on your man and see what you can get. And we're not doing that.
We've spoken about Abada a lot, though, and I'm prepared to give Abada the benefit of youth on this one. Abada, I think Abada might be a better player than Mikey Johnson. Mikey Johnson's got years on Abada. Literally, he's got maybe 2 or so years and earlier debuts and all that sort of stuff. Mikey Johnson's no kicked on, and he's another player that Ange spoke about midweek, talking about, he's not going to give Mikey Johnson a chance. He can't. I think he said, I can't construct a chance for Mikey Johnson. I can just train him and give him opportunities to play. He comes in, he's not really doing it either. It's back to the squad depth thing. But I'm just sorry. Back to Forrest. Melly, I interrupted there.
It's just when I seen Forrest, even before he got that injury, he had a chance where you'd think that James Forrest a couple of years ago would have burned past that guy, put it across the box, or cut into the box and scored, because we know he can do that. But he just thought about it, hesitated, and didn't take on his man. And the way Ange wants to play and the way he's got Jota playing, you're like, I don't know really what he wants. If it's going to need to be a different sort of role for James Forrest, and I just don't know if that's available in this team right now. But again, we're playing him through necessity. Again, he was playing on the left at that game, and that's not his best position. And he goes off after a couple of minutes, and you're like, What do we do now?
I thought the Daily Record do their 100 best players in Scotland or whatever it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do it every year. And they
100, that's mental.
might be. I don't know if it's. I don't read it. I know they do that.
Everyone basically, they included everyone.
It might be 50, right? What the point I'm making here is, Callum McGregor came top, and I thought that didn't take very long, did it? You just start at Callum McGregor and work the way back because Callum McGregor's contribution to Celtic recently, but in the last couple of games, I thought it's been dynamite.
Yeah, he's just had another one. Like, can we not just get 11 Callum McGregors and maybe fine him out? Or
Simple
even
as
two Callum McGregors. Again, he get moved forward a bit at the weekend, but he still puts in that 7 out of 10.
But he's turned into the captain now. He's winning the ball back. He's more physical on the pitch. It was his direction for the free kick.
Yeah.
You know.
And it was a great free kick, and it's nice to see that we work on those type of things, because when you watch the corners, you go, what are we doing here? Because some of them are terrible, but that free kick was a work out, and McGregor was that decoy run in there. He sort of hung about there, made that decoy run, and Rogic comes in round the back. So it's good to see we're working on that. But Callum McGregor is just a class act. You see him, as I said, just growing into this captaincy role. He probably embodies everything Ange wants on the pitch, and I love him. I wish we could have more players like him, because life would be simpler.
I bet Ange would as well. You know?
What a wonderful world it would be. But he's even one of the guys who is actually getting to the byline on occasion and getting a cross or a cut back in as well. I mean, the wingers aren't doing that. It tends to be Callum McGregor.
Callum McGregor, a simple way of putting it, is very good at his job.
There we go. Searing insight once again from your boys here.
Hey, patreon.com/
for more of this
20 minutes. Look, we are not a facts-based podcast even. We are,
oh God, no.
We are patter-based.
Oh, yeah.
You tune in for the XP, the expected patter on this podcast. Callum McGregor is...
Do you think we're outperforming it this week, or is there a discrepancy in there?
Nah, we've been subpar for a long, long time. Callum McGregor's good at his job, as I say, is one man who was patently not good at his job. Who was the referee? What was his name?
The only reason I knew is because I got a programme and Stephen was like, that referee, and I got Ewan Anderson, as if I knew who he was.
Absolutely no idea.
I don't know if what they're doing now, right? If when referees get criticised in this life of ours, what they do is they very maturely and professionally have a backlash against it themselves. And I think what the thing is, Celtic are making a lot of criticisms of referees, Celtic fans. So referees are like, right, okay, well, we're just going to referee you at the letter. So the referees go into the Celtic games all jacked up, all ready to blow whistles and give free kicks and blah, blah, blah. And if a Celtic player gets we'll let that one. He looked at a guy that won a competition to referee a game. The pinnacle of the refereeing decisions was not booking the Motherwell players, Mugabe, and there was another one, Slattery. That guy, both of them could have been off. The pinnacle for me was entirely missing what Celtic did with their well-worked corner.
Yep. You can't use that again now.
We can't use it. So when David Turnbull, was it David Turnbull initially? Was it?
I think it was Greg Taylor.
Greg Taylor plays the ball a wee bit out the D, right? And then David Turnbull runs, and then he did the dummy corner thing, David Turnbull, and the referee blows it back and goes, no, take that again. And the referee thinks either two things happened there, right? The referee thinks a professional footballer took a corner to himself
just dribbled it
and tried to dribble out like a wee boy playing five-a-sides, right? Or he called it back because the ball wasn't in the D thing, right?
Yeah.
But
that's the point.
But but the linesman's also there, isn't he?
He was the other side.
Was he the other side? So there's no. That's one of these ones where referees make mistakes all the time. Yeah, sure, and I'll accept that. Go and tell me what you think happened there.
See, we used to do that when I was coaching with the under 12s, but we'd always say to the ref before it, ref, we might do this wee thing with the corner, but you don't need to tell a professional ref to watch the ball when there's a corner being taken. It was a shocker. Look, see the Mugabe and the Slattery ones as well. Like, saying that maybe should have been sent off is harsh, but it's the fact that they're blatantly having foul after foul and not getting booked, allowing them to make other fouls in the game, which stops Celtic getting ahead. The Mugabe one, there was one I was like, I can't believe he's not booked him there. He pulled somebody back in the middle of the pitch, which stopped a counter-attack, I'm sure. This is what we're complaining about. Again, we're complaining when we win, not when we lose. It's not sour grapes. But again, the opposition manager get booked because he was going nuts at the ref as well.
And then
he shat it after the game when he was getting interviewed. He went back on it, Graham Alexander. But during the game, because I was over behind the dugouts this week, and he was going nuts for the whole game. Going nuts at the fourth official. Yes, I was in with the Tories. He was going nuts at the fourth official. So it's not as if it's just Celtic complaining. Who was it? Like Robbie Nielsen got booked last week as well at Celtic.
He's cracking up as well. Basically every post match he is about to combust about the referees. I
never thought I'd say this either, but after that last week, Monday Sports Sound had Craig Levine on it. I want to hear more from Craig. He was going nuts at it.
Do you know, we didn't even get a chance to talk about that. So Craig Levine was on BBC Sports Sound, and what I found extraordinary, right? Craig Levine was pointing to a game where he was in the touchline, right, as a manager against Dundee, a very famous game, Rangers against Dundee United. And even at the match after the game, he went, well, today was all about Rangers. The referee made so many blatant errors, right, that you can't just say they were all mistakes. It's gaslighting to say that all these things were mistakes, right? That's what it was. And Craig Levine was then talking about that on the radio, and he was like, look, I heard that Craig Levine, who's in football, by the way, he's not on the internet finding this out. He moves in the circle. He's like, I heard that
the manager of Scotland.
He goes, that it was Mike McCurry's last game. He was a Rangers fan. He was given and Tom English was just like, I'm not having this. I'm not having any. Not only is he not having any discussion about bias, but he's not having. He goes, you can't call a referee incompetent. And you think to yourself, well, what's left? Genuinely, what's left? And why are they afforded this mad? At the end of the day, they're just part-time guys.
Yeah,
they're part-time workers in a full-time gig, and there's just it's so extraordinary to me that they're just afforded so much protection. You're not allowed to say they're biased because paranoid. They are. But not, I'm not saying there's a grand conspiracy, but Mike McCurry is a dyed-in-the-wool Rangers fan. He went on to do Rangers fan events and all that after this sort of thing, and he was given his last game at Ibrox as a present. And if you just watch the performance, like, it doesn't take Columbo to, you know what I mean? It's not the wild leap that it sounds. I'm not saying these referees are biased against Celtic, but that game against... Was it the Hearts game? Kyogo scored the offside.
Yeah.
And then the Dundee United game, we were given like
4 or something like
that. 4 times as many offside calls as we had been all season off the back of Kyogo scoring an offside goal. So
the head of refs is on Sports Sound.
The head of refs on Sports Sound talking about it for the first time in God knows how long. So this all feeds in. There's this notion, I think, amongst Scottish football journalists that referees just go about their job. They're not influenced at all by outside influence or anything. They just do the job to the letter of the law, and then that's it. That's bollocks.
Yeah.
That's bollocks.
I think during that BBC segment you're talking about, when Craig Levine started hinting towards refereeing conspiracies, the BBC were frantically looking around for like some sort of emergency test signal that they've not used since World War II.
One of those big hooks just to pull Craig Levine's the back of his chair. Like, I'm not saying there's like some grand conspiracy. There might be, right? But there's this notion in the mainstream media that you can't say that referee had a shocking game. Why? I don't understand why there's a compulsion to defend it. I don't understand why. Are you not like, for the better of the game? Are we not supposed to call this stuff out?
I think people are maybe terrified that if you start opening your mind to, or publicly opening your mind to that, you might just be opening a can of worms that will never close, and we'll be talking about refereeing conspiracies forever.
I'm not talking about the conspiracies as much, Stephen. I'm talking about after that game. Why were people not? They're always so. So say a manager makes a mistake, hammered. Player makes a mistake, hammered. Referee is a bad game. Oh, you better watch what you say. And you could have seen that. It's open to interpretation and blah blah blah.
No, you're right. That is different. I think people have long called for referees to have some sort of public accountability to come out and explain their decisions. I don't know what good that would do, really.
There was SFA whistleblower website which lasted for a season until they just I think they lied on it. It turned into a MySpace blog.
Snakes everywhere. Facebook
referees posting Peaky Blinders memes about loyalty and all that.
I just tell it how it is. Stuff. If I don't like you, I'll say it to your face over a picture of Tom Hardy.
Yeah, that's where Hugh Dallas posted the Pope meme.
Imagine it was happening now. John Beaton does his report and signs at the bottom, John Beaton, WATP.
Anyway, look, let's wrangle this back on point. The referees recently have been appalling.
I don't want to be cruel here, but when I turned up to the game, yes, I walked out into the area of the stadium through the concourse. I came out and I saw the referees warming up, because that's where they often are when Mel and I arrive. We walk out to the wee bit and they're right there. They do their wee shuttle runs and all that. And I don't want to be unkind here, but the three of them looked absolutely terrible doing it. I thought that one of them looked as if he'd had a recent hip replacement or a wooden leg or something like that. He was just doing weird wee runs. And I don't know who he is. Again, I don't want to be a dick about it, but I'm just like, oh, hold on. I know it's not
a physical element to this.
Yes, it's not full time, granted, but it is it is ultimately an athletic endeavour to be a semi-professional, a top flight. Let's put it top flight, because it's not professional. A top flight referee at some sort of level of football. You need to be fit, and they just didn't look it, to be perfectly honest.
You need to be physically fit, but you also need to be mentally engaged and on the ball. You need to be mentally engaged on the ball. Look, we just want to finish up. We can't go away for the game without talking about the silent protests, as well as the backlash, and then the backlash against the backlash, and then absolutely everyone on social media having a completely normal one about it. It's let's rise above all the nonsense that we've been seeing on social media and just give our own honest opinions on this. It's long past time that the club need to engage with fans on this. There's a phrase that we use quite often when we're pissed off with the way things are going in the club, and it's, the club don't treat us like fans, they treat us like customers. Well, now, I don't know what's lower than a customer, because the club are just not listening to their customers at this point. We on this podcast signed a joint letter that was produced by Fans Against Criminalisation and North Cove and all that about, Bernard Higgins and not being appointed to Celtic. And it's really, the argument doesn't really go beyond that. He just can't get the job. No, and
really
every
Celtic, simple,
it's really that there's. It's really, really that simple for the fans. The guy can't get the job. He shouldn't be anywhere near Celtic. He made his bed. And if the choices he made back in his previous career have impacted future employment, if the choices he made in his life have impacted future employment opportunities for him,
welcome to the club.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
Too bad. And
doing this affects my future employment.
Yeah. Well, the thing, the Don Raids and arresting all these guys that went to the football has affected their life and affected their future employment possibilities. So what Bernard Higgins is experiencing right now is the consequences of his actions, frankly. And there's
life.
Yeah, that's life, baby. And there's just no way that the Celtic can employ this guy. Now, I saw another Twitter account, I can't remember who it was, but I thought they made a great point. And they said it's gone to the point where now Celtic almost lack leadership here. It's like there's nobody really in charge. And I think about mainly what's been happening at Celtic the past couple of weeks, not a couple of weeks, couple of months, maybe a year now. Things are good with Ange, right? Front of house, everything's fine. But at the back, we're still this debate about directors of football. It still took us months to hire a head of sports science. Michael Nicholson was put in temporary charge of temporary CEO, whatever he is. Is he the CEO? Is he going to continue? There's all this stuff happening behind the scenes, and still keeps talking about the work that needs done behind the scenes. And it does look like just a club that lacks leadership, because the silent protest in my book was fine. It was mild. It was mild, and I don't buy into it affected the performance and all this sort of stuff. Honestly, I don't even want to go down that road. But just come to the club now need to come to the table and speak to these fans groups and say, look, here's our thoughts, and we'll just say, well, you can't get the job.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. I mean, we could go long-winded here, but the basic...
I was pretty long-winded.
Well, the basic fact of it is they can't go through with this. I do appreciate that. I mean, we can't really get it twisted here. We can't expect Celtic to issue a statement based on this. The club can't come out publicly and say we are not appointing this man.
They can't name him.
Yeah, that's my point. They can't do that, because there will be legal implications in that. You can't come out and say we are not employing this guy, because if I was him, I'd be like, and I'm not. If I was him, I'd be like, hey, Celtic, don't be naming me in official statements.
Also, it doesn't make sense to release a statement saying we're not signing this person who we're not employing.
Correct. So that's not coming. But what can happen is either some sort of private meeting with supporters groups, or just issuing a statement saying the search is ongoing for this role, something like that.
The search is ongoing. There's been a lot of speculation in public and in the media about candidates for this role, and we just want to state for the record that names associated with this role in the public domain aren't being considered.
Yeah,
something along those lines, something just that washes over.
Yeah, as much as we're talking about this individual's own actions impacting his future employment. Celtic can't do something that affects his
They can't
future.
throw that.
Yes,
they can't throw a guy
they can't do something that then affects his future employment because
he's nothing to do with Celtic.
Exactly. So they can't name him in anything official. So just don't expect that is my point. But that doesn't mean Celtic can't do anything about it. And they absolutely have to step up and do something.
Again, it's just treated with total contempt again. Same as last season. We know better than you. If we were going to do this, we'll not give in a mob rule or anything. But this has been a peaceful, silent protest. So there's never been anything in my lifetime supporting Celtic or even out with maybe Newcastle fans with Mike Ashley or that sort of thing. But there's never been an appointment that's been rumoured to be happening where so many Celtic fans have come together and said this cannot happen. But if the board were to go against it now and appoint him, would be utter madness. But at the same time, you're thinking about why is it taking so long for them to come out and say that however they do it.
Long to do everything. It takes them absolutely ages to do everything. I think
it's sort of what you're saying is everything's going well on the pitch apart from the injuries. All the fans are behind this. Celtic fans have sold out season tickets again. We've all done our bit again. Yet again, behind the scenes, it's a mess. Because again, look, even when we go back to the 1st of September, we'll go, right, we've got the players, some amount of players in, let's get the rest of the stuff we were told we were going to get in, and we've not done any of it. We've brought in one guy, and Dom Mackay's left since then, and it's as if it didn't happen. It's as if it didn't happen. So this is just another thing, like, just get your shit together, Celtic. We're trying. Players are trying. You need to do it as well. This guy cannot be anywhere near the club. It's toxic and it's going to ruin what could be a great season.
What I said at the time of the first sort of the beginnings of the protest, remember there was a Livingston game where I think was that the half-hour silence and then they burst into song, and then shortly after that was the tennis balls thing, and we spoke about it at the time. What I said at the time was I support anyone's right to do these things. If it's a peaceful protest, no one's getting hurt, it's just disrupting some football, crack on and do it, and I will stick to that. I will support anyone's right to protest against something they strongly feel is immoral or not right or whatever.
This is immoral as well.
Correct. So exactly. So I support everyone's right to do that. The knock-on effect into the stadium isn't great either, because now we've got people chanting, "You can stick your silent protest up your arse" above it. So
I don't know why you would do that.
Well, the irony being that you can sing anything you want, but that's what you've chosen to sing. And I don't want to have a go at these people either, because it's a tense situation, it's a complicated situation, and we're watching Celtic play at the time, and we're all trying to just go about our lives and enjoy the football, and this is all going on round about us. I don't buy into the fact that it's affecting the team. Does it matter? Yes, but is it the difference between winning and drawing and losing? I can't buy into that at all. I think there's always a more logical explanation. Correlation doesn't equal causation. It doesn't, just because the performances go down slightly in alongside this protest doesn't mean that's what's causing it. There's always a lot more logical explanation, and it is that we don't have any attacking footballers at the moment. We've not got a striker. It's like, remember Neil Lennon, as part of his defence of what happened last season, he said that Liverpool had fallen off a cliff as well, and it was just so, well, COVID's weird now, football's weird, but it didn't really take into account that Liverpool weren't as good as Man City anyway, and they didn't have a defence for most of the season. So as a result, they didn't have a defence. The midfield had to play in defence, so they didn't have a midfield either. That's why they were losing games. And the reason Celtic toiled, or maybe looked a little bit lethargic to me, wasn't because of songs about meeting guys in the Gallagate and all that. It was because the squad's stretched.
That's it. So, and that's it. And look, you're ruining Christmas. That's it. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? Celtic board, you're ruining Christmas. Speaking of Christmas, packed fixture schedule for us over on patreon.com. 23rd of December, we are having a live Patreon Christmas party. We had it last year. It was a lot of fun. Just sign up to Patreon. You can take part. You can join us on the show. There'll be quiz and prizes and all that. It's going to be absolutely smashing.
Whole lot of fun. Prizes to be won.
Whole lot of fun. Prizes to be won. And on that bombshell, we shall wrap up. Melly, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Stephen, would you like to say goodbye?
Nice bookends there, because we started with a reference from the 80s and then we finished with a reference to a long-forgotten game show from the 90s as well. So we're really doing it for the teenagers again this week. So yes, goodbye. Thanks for listening, folks, and watching indeed.
Thanks for listening and watching.